Hello, my name is Charlotte Coles, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the inaugural Europe University Summit today. Our next session of the day will be Hiring for Tomorrow, Future Trends in Student Employability, in collaboration with LinkedIn, and led by THE's Miranda Prin. The next session will include a live Q&A, so please do post your questions throughout, and these will be picked up by our moderator. And now over to you, Miranda.
Hi there, welcome to our THE Europe University's Summit event, Hiring for Tomorrow, Future Trends in Student Employability. I'm Miranda Prin, Content Curator for THE Campus, where we share peer-to-peer advice and best practice in higher education, teaching and learning. I'm here today with Nicola Doherty, Head of Education at LinkedIn across Europe, the Middle East, Africa and Latin America. Nicola works with education institutions to support their efforts to build the skills needed for the 21st century, and she is going to share some insight on the future direction of travel in employability with us. So welcome, Nicola, and over to you.
Hi, thank you very much, and really honoured to be here, very, very grateful. So now, bear with me now while we get slides up. As Miranda was saying, I lead the education business in EMEA and LATAM, and today I'm going to go briefly through some of the key trends that we're seeing from our work with educational institutions and businesses across the European and LATAM region. Now, the synergy between LinkedIn and education institutions actually starts with our promise that our vision aligns the broader economic and education initiatives that are driven by the institutions themselves. And we're driving towards this and looking to achieve our promise by engaging with our members. Now, we currently have over 722 million globally, and this is still growing at a rate of approximately 3 members per second. So it's absolutely phenomenal. And what we're also observing is unprecedented engagement on the platform as our members are increasingly consuming content while networking to grow and achieve their careers as well. Now, our education teams are responsible for harnessing the power of LinkedIn in our learning partnerships with academic institutions. And a lot of our work is centered on helping institutions with their education programs and their employability initiatives. Now, the rapid pace of innovation and technological change continues to disrupt the European economy and the labour market here. And McKinsey has estimated that approximately 51 million European jobs are at risk from displacement from automation alone. And students today have a very different expectation of the world. Whether this means now that they're able to connect with their friends, easily register or attend classes online, or learn the latest skills on the fly, they now have an on-demand mindset, and they're bringing this mindset with them to university, which makes preparing students for the future workforce even more challenging. Now, it's well understood, and you don't need me to talk about it, but AI and automation are causing significant disruption, and they're disrupting the needs of companies and the labour market generally speaking. And consequently, it affects the types of skills that education institutions must develop or train for. And what I hear so often from our education clients is that the practice of keeping curriculum up to date against constantly evolving industry needs is really challenging for various reasons, like the difficulty in isolating the relevant industry skills and doing it in a scaled and dynamic way, while also managing other core education institution objectives like research and teaching. And then this leads to a perceived gap that students sometimes feel when they leave school and enter the workforce. So according to a survey that we did with students, 61% of professionals said that higher ed did not prepare them for their career and their workplace. And this is further exacerbated by the pressures brought about by COVID-19, where not only were schools' digital transformation needs accelerated, as most had to migrate to an online setting, but we also saw universal dips in hiring across industries. And if that parallels the effects of the global financial crisis in 2008, 2009, is going to have a sustained impact on hiring, career mobility, wages, and continuing education. Now, effectively what the pandemic has done is it's shone a very harsh light on what was already a widening skills gap. And that's a gap that needs to be closed with even greater urgency if we're going to accelerate economic recovery and come out of this pandemic. Now, This is a longer term disconnect between supply and demand, and this has been largely driven by three primary long-term factors. One is the rapid emergence of AI-powered technologies that's propelled a whole new era of automation. The second would be a growing need for technological acumen to compete in a changing commercial landscape. And the third one then would be the drop-off in employer-based training investments over the last 2 decades. Now, navigating these challenges and closing the skill gap is going to require a renewed partnership between stakeholders across the public, private, and non-profit sectors. Now, unfortunately, this pattern is poised to repeat itself with an added emphasis on the jobs recovery that requires an increasing focus on digital skills. And there's 2 reasons why this appears likely. First, in the short term, COVID-19 will continue to lead to unprecedented reliance on digital skills. In many situations, some workers are going to continue to work in a hybrid economy, where some of the workplace are working in the office, while others continue to work from home. And this shorter term hybrid economy is a more digital economy. And so with continued consumer and employee reliance on almost remote everything, we're going to expect digitization of the economy to continue to advance at an accelerated speed. And as companies respond to a recession by increasing efficiency, this need for digital transformation is going to increase even further. Now, the second point that I would make is that the economic recovery will take place amid the longer term and already unfolding wave of automation based on the new technologies that underpin what most have been calling the fourth industrial revolution. And over the next 5 years, as you can see on this slide here, we estimate that the global workforce can absorb about 149 million new technology-oriented jobs. Now, software development accounts for the largest single share of this forecast, but jobs in related fields like data analysis, cybersecurity, and privacy protection are also poised to grow substantially. Now, one of the ways that LinkedIn helps our partners better understand and manage against these macroeconomic pressures and challenges is through our data, which comes about from the sheer scale of our platform. So the economic graph is a virtual representation of the community that our members have created, and it consists of the data and connections that exist between over 722 million members, 55 million companies, 14 million open jobs at any given time, 36,000 skills mapped against our skills taxonomy, and over 115,000 schools. Now, this is a very big map of the working world. It's ever growing, ever changing, constantly updated, and informing our content roadmap, course recommendations, and talent insights products. Now, the unique data and insights that are captured through the economic graph underpin the value that we're able to deliver to customers in helping you plan, develop, and employ your future workforce, or rather our future workforce and your students. Now, the advantages of LinkedIn's data is that it is global, it's granular, it's there in real time, and it's also historical. So members are constantly updating their profiles. We've had about 358 billion feed updates viewed in 2019 alone. And like I said before, we've 3 million members joining LinkedIn every second. So it's incredibly up to date. And when you think about all of the different things that people will update about their profile all the time, if they're changing jobs, new responsibilities, moving country, the richness and depth that the data is unbelievable. We also have access to career histories, but can also monitor migration patterns and member behavior over time. And like what we can do with that then is take a very granular look at the labour market. Besides geographical entities, we can also break down by industry, function, gender, university. It's just unbelievable what we can do. And because of these advantages, there's an incredible power in using the economic graph to uncover insights about how your students are changing and to inform curriculum or the career journeys of your students from education to employment. Now, ultimately, we help educational institutions plan, develop, and employ their staff and students using our unique insights. And often schools are looking for holistic solutions that address needs across the entire student journey and across each of these different areas: plan, develop, and employ. And so with LinkedIn, you can plan, and by that, what I mean is to think strategically about addressing your education and workforce strategies using LinkedIn's insights or other insights. Help students develop and learn new skills with tools like LinkedIn Learning, and employ, so support students in navigating the beginning of their career in an ever-changing workforce. Now, our overarching goal is to, sorry, there's a few animations on that one. Oh no, I apologize, it's not. Our overarching goal is to complement the student's journey from acceptance and school orientation through graduation and into the workforce. And at every step throughout that student journey, we leverage the economic graph. And that's done through insights and also through our product suites to guide students. So an example of that there would be using tools like ours to assess labour market trends in order to inform the education curriculum. Using LinkedIn Learning to bridge skill gaps, both in the classroom face-to-face or via flipped classroom environments when teaching remotely. Using things like Microsoft Career Coach to support students in their career navigation and job searching tasks. And when we think about the student journey, many would argue that there are three fundamental levers to pull to enhance student employment success. And that those would be competencies or credentials, access to information, and also access to social capital. Across each of these dimensions, LinkedIn supports students by helping them build a professional brand while also connecting with a community of industry professionals, mentors, and other like-minded students, while also discovering new career opportunities and applying for jobs. So first, how do schools use LinkedIn data to plan an education strategy to nimbly prepare students for tomorrow's workforce? Well, schools often leverage LinkedIn Talent Insights or other tools to adopt a data-driven approach to education and workforce planning, mainly in two areas. So I would call out the career pathways and also the workforce placements. So with respect to career paths, Insights help schools to understand core and emerging skills across key occupations and sectors, gauge future demand on emerging jobs, while also identifying education pathways for their students. And then when it comes to workforce placement, schools use Insights to identify growing employers and occupations, uncover new career pathways for their students, and also plan for emerging talent demands to inform private sector industry partnerships. One example of this work is really seen through the Emerging Jobs Report for the UK, which some of you may have already seen. So in this report, we've analysed hiring patterns amongst over the 33 million profiles we have in the UK and established what are right now the fastest growing jobs in the UK's labour market. And those are what we've got outlined there on the slide. Now, they're not necessarily brand new roles. An emerging job may have grown out of a more traditional job, or it can also be a completely new job that's being created now to address new business needs. While there may not yet be a large pool of talent who hold this job, what we have observed is that large and year-on-year growth for these professionals who are hired into these roles, and we do believe that these are going to be long-term trends. Now, another example of this type of work can be seen here, where we've collaborated with the World Economic Forum and highlighted the 10 highest demand skills that are estimated for 2025. Now, as you can see, a significant proportion of these skills would be considered foundational or transferable skills, or even what we call soft skills. Ones such as communication, analytical thinking, creativity, or influence are required across a vast spectrum of industries and occupations. And these are also highly difficult to automate or replace with artificial intelligence. So what I would highlight is, in order to future-proof your students, these are the skills that every student should be developing in preparation for graduation and in preparation of entering the workforce. Now, in addition to identifying emerging talent trends, universities are often interested in using our insights to inform how best to identify and develop critical skills for emerging jobs. Sorry, I got myself lost. So we talked about how institutions use LinkedIn to plan and develop students for emerging labour market demands. But the overarching, sorry if I pull out, I've got myself lost here now. Sorry, so if I call out on this slide, so essentially what we've been able to do is using the data, we've been able to map out the most representative set of skills for these emerging jobs. So this list here is not necessarily the emerging jobs from the UK. These were actually coming from a global list of jobs that are in demand, and we expect to continue to be in demand over the next months and years. And if we look at the DevOps engineer job, for example, what we've been able to do there is break out in that role what are the most representative skills against that position. So for them, it would be Docker products, Kubernetes, Jenkins, Terraform, amongst others. And furthermore, what we've also been able to do is map and identify learning paths against each of those skills as well, so that from an institutional perspective, when they do work with us, that we can showcase courses and content that we can help them to develop those skills within their curriculum without necessarily having to create it themselves from scratch. And from that perspective, allowing our educational clients to be quite nimble to adapt to emerging and new technologies that are coming up in a short period of time. So ultimately, schools use our data to tactically develop supplemental learning plans to help better equip their students with the right skills to prepare for the emerging jobs that come out in the market. Now, we have talked there about how institutions are using LinkedIn to plan and develop for their students. But ultimately, what we're trying to solve here is employability and how to place students into meaningful jobs. So from a LinkedIn perspective, internally, we want to ensure that we're keeping ourselves accountable. And so we always look to measure the value of our products against student success or employment outcomes. And so this past year, we've started efforts to begin measuring the value of learning against student employment outcomes for our educational customers. And so what we've done is compare the job pathways of students who actively used LinkedIn and LinkedIn Learning platform versus those who didn't. And the results are stunning. So we found that a year after graduation, despite attending the exact same institution, students who actively used LinkedIn Learning had an 11% higher likelihood of being employed than those who didn't use it. And ultimately, you kind of wonder, what drove that success? And for me, it comes down to the value of the LinkedIn profile. So ultimately, LinkedIn drives workforce success by driving 3 critical levers of student success. And that's, again, access to social capital, information, and competencies, and also creates that ability to strengthen their networks. So when I talk about social capital, it's about building relationships with mentors, with prospective employers, again with your peers and other students around you. What it also does by using LinkedIn is it increases their job discoverability and helps them upskill to become competitive applicants against other when they're applying for positions themselves. What we've also found is that there's a positive correlation between student engagement and the LinkedIn platform itself. So a couple of stats that I would call out there is that, if you apply for a job within the first 10 minutes after receiving a notification, you increase the chances of hearing back by up to 4x. Again, I think this is what we were calling out before. A LinkedIn member with a LinkedIn Learning certificate added to their profile is 9% more likely to be hired than a member without one. For students, that's 10%, which is fantastic. And on LinkedIn, applicants are nearly 4 times more likely to get a job at a company where they already have connections. So again, that reinforces the value of the network and of building connections with people, particularly in companies that they want to be employed in and want to make that first move. So just to summarize, as we've shown today, you can build a more informed education or talent strategy, better develop the right skills, and better adapt curriculum to bridge skill gaps, all of which to better employ students and drive success in this constantly changing labour market. And so if I was to conclude and ask why would an institute adopt a LinkedIn strategy across your campus, what I would say is that while education institutions bring a huge degree of strength to the table, your faculty, your campus, your culture, your technology, no one entity can do it alone. And that's why institutions seek out partnerships with like-minded organizations like us to help improve their students' chances. And we're doing that on a global basis to help institutions nimbly adapt to a rapidly changing world and to help students from all walks of life build their network, learn in-demand skills, and ultimately land their dream job. And so ultimately what I would say is that we both possess unique strengths, and by combining them together, we can bolster student outcomes more than doing it alone. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Nicola. That was fascinating insight, covering a lot of ground there. So thank you for sharing that with us. We've actually only got 10 minutes to run through a few questions, and obviously any that come in from the audience. But the first thing I wanted to talk about is you talked in your slides about the kind of key skills anticipated for 2025. And the work that LinkedIn does around sort of job roles and I guess the skills that those entail. So off the back of all that, what would you say are the kind of key, in inverted commas, employability skills most in demand right now? And kind of off the back of that, where are the gaps?
Yeah, totally. Well, as I kind of mentioned earlier, our workplaces are changing at an incredible rate, and that's representative of the changing needs of employers around the world. So the pace in which these changes are taking effect are unprecedented in human history, because new technologies and business models, as well as the pandemic, have just completely changed how we work. And to actually compound that even further, the shelf life of skills is getting smaller and smaller. And research is indicating that technical skills that we would have expected or in the past had a half-life of about 10 years, now only have a half-life of 2.5. So not alone are new skills being created, but our existing skills are becoming out of date and obsolete. So in terms of employability, what I would say is that our graduates need a blend of both soft and hard skills. We did a lot of research on an annual basis, but the most recent one for us at the end of 2020 categorized like all of the job ads that had been put on LinkedIn over the course of the year, and broke down all of the skills that that were being sought within the advertisement itself. And what they were calling out for was, from a soft skills perspective, the number one was creativity, persuasion, and then collaboration. And on the hard skills side, the most in demand were blockchain, cloud computing, and also analytical reasoning. But what's crazy is that, to highlight just how quickly these changed rather, blockchain wasn't even in the top 10 last year. And it just shot up to number one. So it's just incredibly difficult for people if you're not kind of connected with the data and seeing and anticipating the trends. It's very difficult to get ahead of that, so that graduates are kind of future-proof rather than necessarily getting developing the skills that were needed 4 years ago. So if I was focusing on anything, I'd focus on those right now.
Yeah, and I guess therefore sort of adaptability, kind of being able to constantly change is ever more vital, based on what you say of this incredibly fast turnover of sort of skills demand. Sorry.
No, go on.
I was going to say, just to clarify on the soft skills, hard skills, most people I think would be familiar with that, but from the way you describe it, so soft skills are very much the kind of human sort of interpersonal communication stuff, and then the hard skills much more kind of technical know-how.
Exactly, yeah. Soft skills are anything really that's more like a behavior, or something that's it's, like, to your point, collaboration, communication, empathy, emotional intelligence. Something that really is, to me, point before, very difficult for a computer to do instead. And when you think about it, it's just so fundamental to every single job that you come across in the day. You could be the best engineer in the world, but if you're not able to communicate your ideas, there's a limit to where you're going to be able to get to in your career.
Yeah, of course. And now, I guess, off the back of all that, in terms of sort of universities and their work, obviously trying to prepare graduates for now and a future world, where do you think universities are succeeding, and where do you think they kind of can continue to evolve in supporting graduate employability?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it was The Economist a couple of years ago that said, data is the new oil. But actually, like, our most valuable resources are people. Enterprise and innovation, they're built by people, not data. And I think that universities are often, if not always, the most formative experience in a person's life, where you build critical skills and your network. And student services in universities, they just play such a critical role in helping our young people evolve and grow. And I believe that at the same time, the feedback from businesses and students highlight, some significant gaps in terms of, graduate employability. And, I think that we need to focus on a number of areas, like using data and insights to better understand the skills needed by the labour market, and then adapting the curriculum accordingly. I know that in itself can often be incredibly laborious and quite difficult, but I think there's small things that can be done that universities can apply to adapt quite quickly in that respect. Another would be to help students better understand how to navigate their career. And for me, that's not just about, how to create a good LinkedIn profile or CV, but how to identify and articulate their skills and build that network. I think one of the things, that I think thankfully we're talking about more and more now is about economic inequity. And I think it's a huge problem for us in our societies. And we at LinkedIn, we would describe that as a network gap. And, unbelievably, this network gap is 12 times. So it's 12x based on, where you grew up, the university that you went to, or where you work. And I think that universities play a crucial role in building that more equitable role. And I think, that technology can play a really big part in supporting them do that.
And just to clarify that, then, the data shows that those who fulfill certain criteria will be 12 times more likely to get certain roles. Is that, when you talk about 12x, is that what you mean, just to make it absolutely clear?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's
Okay.
12 times more likely to get into a high-paying position.
Wow. Okay.
And it's just unbelievable how the advantages get compounded over the course of our lives. And it's little things that you just wouldn't, if you grew up in a low income household, you don't know what you don't know often. And a lot of things would get, if you are in a house that, you went to, that your parents went to university, they can help guide you and take you through step by step, how to build a good essay, how to deal with feedback, how to work within teams. And that's all just stuff that gets compounded over time, and it is staggering. I think it's 4x alone, based just on the institution that you're studying at and the network that you build as a result of that. And it's very much things that, it's little steps often can have a big impact on things like that.
Yeah. I'm aware we've only got about a minute left, and there are a few questions coming in. So one, actually, which is what I wanted to ask about anyway, which is, do you think employers are still kind of valuing a degree, if you like, or do you think sort of lifelong learning and additional credentials are now needed to sort of keep, on the game?
Yeah, totally. Well, I'll be wild quick because we've only got the 1 minute. But I would say absolutely. One of the reasons why I would say that is I'm currently studying my MBA at Warwick University in the UK at the moment. And that's precisely because of the recognition applied formal qualifications. But in saying that, I do believe that we're on the cusp of change. And I feel that what we're going to see is an expansion in how employers recognize skills and experience. And I think given the huge pace of change again that we're going through, I think that I suppose the biggest thing is going to be on to your point before about being able to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And because of that, and that the need for being able to show that continuous lifelong learning, I think we're going to see a bigger focus on certifications to supplement and build upon the knowledge that they get at university. And so, I think that one of the most fundamental reasons why someone enrolls in a degree program is to build skills that will give them a better trajectory in life. And there's an expectation there that, it'll showcase the skills needed for the job that they want in the end. And I think that a qualification very much does that. But I think that certifications and other types of ways to showcase skill development is also needed to show them do that over the course of their entire lives, not just at the beginning.
Yeah, great. Look, we are out of time, sadly, because I would love to keep chatting. But thank you so much, Nicola, for sharing so much fascinating insight.
No, thank you for having me.
Please join me in sending a virtual clap and thank you to Miranda and Nicola for their session. We have come to the end of day 1 of the summit, and I would like to thank you all for joining us, and I look forward to welcoming you tomorrow. We'll be taking a look at the future of Europe's digital economy, threats to academic freedom, and the rise of pan-national universities. So I hope to see you all then. Thank you.